The go-to-market strategy should be complementary. So traditionally, typically, marketing is supposed to cast a wide net, and sales is supposed to be sniper focused on what they're reaching out to. But at the end of the day, you really need the same segments that you're targeting, right? You should have the same ideal customer profile in mind. I've seen a changing point happen at different company sizes. There's like every company's different, but when you go from a lot of the growth stage companies that I'm working with today, from kind of the startup mindset to that next scaling mindset, there's something that takes place where you go from selling to kind of whoever is willing to buy your product to selling to really scaling your sales model. And I really don't want to pick on product here, but a lot of companies believe products can sell themselves. And sometimes they can, but actually this is pretty rare. And while certainly it's not going to happen if you're not talking to the problems that you're solving or the pain points, as Todd mentioned just before this slide. I've started working with several clients that have a lot of assumptions about who their target audience is. That's one big key thing that defines the go-to-market. When I ask a product manager, they'll say something completely different than a salesperson who will say something completely different than a marketing person. That's a huge problem. And it's very common. And a lot of the time it's just departments not talking to each other. I ran into an example of this recently with a company that sells accounting software to businesses. Marketing's market research says that they should be targeting companies with annual revenues between $100 million and $500 million. But sales is having conversations with companies at the low end of that revenue band and learning that companies they're really too small and they're not closing these $100 million deals. In the meantime, marketing's spending all this money and time and effort advertising to these $100 million companies, but these deals aren't closing. And sales, once you pass the lead over to sales, you're going to get a question like Todd asked me in the beginning of this webinar, like, where are all my leads? Because you're ignoring the ones that aren't valuable. So how do you fix this problem? What do? You have to have a conversation and jointly agree on a target audience. I find it helpful to have a conversation with a shared group of people, varying departments, like get that product manager in there, get sales, marketing, C-suite, customer success. You need multiple group of people to help you define who that target audience is with specifics. At this time, it's just as important knowing what is not a lead, what is disqualified, as what is qualified. So for this, I personally follow Forrester's methodology, but there are many frameworks out there to help you find your audience that can help facilitate this discussion. And this one particularly, you can see on the screen, for those of you that are looking at the screen, you're looking at defining the firmographics you're trying to target, the specific industries, the buying centers, which are really just departments. And within those buying centers, there are personas, and each of those personas have specific needs. And so your product can address those specific needs for those people that we're talking about. On the right side of the screen, you see education, solution, and selection. This is how I look at the sales cycle. You have to educate the market on the problems that they need to be addressing. You want to tell people to educate the market on problems you need to solve. And in the beginning of the solution during education, then in solution, you're going to talk about how you can solve those problems and help them narrow down their selection during the selection process to ultimately choose you. Marketing should be involved in varying degrees across these three stages, but the majority of our time is spent during the education phase. So we really need to be aware of which personas are present during that period of the buying process in order to be successful. So this whole slide and talking points could be its own presentation. So this is just a taste, but I wanted to give a specific example of something that's worked for me.